Shanti, Jayantiben. And a warm welcome to everyone to another amazing session with Sister Jayanti. And Jayantiben, I would just like to share that regarding Baba's Murli on obedience. As you know, Islam actually means submission. And Islam has the word salam, which is peace. But then I went to look in the Bible, and there's so many references in the Bible, so many, to obedience. And one of the references I liked is true hearing. And I think that's what Baba wants from us. So welcome, Sister Jayanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti, and thank you, Arunaben, and Om Shanti to all those who've joined us from many different parts of the world. It's a very, very strong Murli, and yet, of course, Baba is the truth and the ocean of love. As the ocean of love, Baba wants to uplift us and bring us to our own highest possible state, to fulfill our own highest potential. And as such, Baba doesn't hesitate from telling us exactly what it is we need to do at this moment. And so sometimes we feel that Baba's Murli is very strong, which it is, but it is the truth. And so you can't dilute the truth. And Baba is speaking to his children. And so, of course, those children who recognized Baba and understood that Baba is the purifier, that the purpose of God's coming is to be able to transform. People today are thinking about how do we bring about systemic change. But of course, what Baba has made us understand is that when we change, then the world can change, and then the systems of the world can also be put right. And so in this Murli of 1988, January, just a few days before the 18th of January, in fact, all these Murlis that we've been listening to recently, all have been quite strong. And I think that especially the January Murlis, and each one of those has been very strong, Baba's preparing us for what he would like to see on the 18th of January. So this time, Baba didn't give us a lot of praise and all the beautiful expressions that raise our level of self-esteem. And then Baba begins to tell us, but what about this, this, and this, and this? You have to sort it out. Today, Baba went straight into the topic of obedience and disobedience. And yes, of course, all the spiritual teachings that are there within the texts of all the different religious traditions all carry similar ideas. And the only difference perhaps that now we know exactly who is the divine and how to be able to connect with the divine and draw the power that we need to be obedient. Otherwise, we understand all these things are important and very valuable, but we don't have enough power to be able to implement and execute all those instructions. So today, Baba's saying that Baba gives directions to everyone, all at the same time, and each one then has a choice of what it is they choose to do. It's not that Baba gives private instructions in secret to a few. All the information's available to everyone. And then Baba spoke about two types of children. The third type, Baba did not want to talk about that at all today. So Baba didn't go there. But the first two types of children. Firstly, a minority number, but they're very powerful ones. The ones who are absolutely and completely obedient to the Father. And what Baba meant by that was their thought, their word, and their actions were really following each one of Baba's directions. And then further on, Baba clarified, not even just following directions, but following in the footsteps of the Father, because the Father has shown us the way to be able to fulfill God's instructions. And so following in the footsteps of Brahma means that we're able to see how easily we are following those instructions. And so are my thoughts, words, and actions at all times constantly obedient? And then Baba described how there are some who are obedient from time to time, not always, not consistently, but from time to time. And so at times there is obedience, but then at other times, the obedience is remembered after seeing the result of action. And Baba was explaining that sometimes you're engaged in action and you think everything is fine, but in fact, it hasn't been according to God's Srimad. And so the result of those things, the words, the actions, are not quite satisfactory. And so you had a high expectation that there would be beautiful results from something you said and did, but the results weren't like that. And then you realize that there was something missing, that there wasn't the adherence to Baba's instructions. There wasn't total obedience. And so after the action, seeing the result, then I'm reminded that there are specific instructions that Baba has given so that my mind follows those instructions, my words and my actions also. And so sometimes I remember before the action and then everything is good. But sometimes I forget. And so remembering after seeing the results, well, of course, by then the results are fixed in the drama and they're not very satisfactory, but then that's something that I have to deal with. But that's the outcome if I don't remember Baba's instructions and I'm not being obedient all the time, all the time. And of course, being obedient then means that it's not just a question of my action, but who is in my remembrance? Am I doing it according to the method that Baba has taught me? So Baba explained that very clearly. If the seed of action isn't as it should be, then of course the results are not as we would like them to be. And for those who are obedient, constant adherence to Srimad, obedience, because Baba is remembered and is with them at all times. And so the results are ones that bring happiness and power. Baba also spoke about, at a later point, about the will power that the soul is filled with as it performs actions based on truth and obedience to God. And so it reminded me how we used to see the spiritual capacity of the dadis actually growing in front of our eyes. I'm very fortunate that I saw the dadis from a very young age. And then after my surrender in the 60s, then again, I was with them very closely, observing them. And of course, at all times, I saw them as being almost perfect. To my eyes, it seemed that way. But as time went on, I could see their inner power growing, their capacity growing, and the results being more and more beautiful. So Baba spoke about all those things of souls who are obedient souls. And then Baba also mentioned very, very clearly that when there are souls who are obedient, then thought, word, and action is all fruitful, is all worthwhile, because the seed of action is filled with power. And so that powerful seed is going to bring very good fruits. And Baba then described how with the others, Of course, sometimes the fruit is visible and it's very clear that it's worthwhile. Sometimes the fruit is not according to their expectation. And the main aspect with which to be able to see for myself, it's not a judgment by anyone else, but to be able to see for myself is to look at the results. And Baba spoke about contentment in 3 different ways. Having performed the action, am I content with myself? Or is there that sense that, well, I could have done better, I should have done better, I didn't give it enough time, I didn't give it enough attention, whatever. But certainly there isn't that contentment with myself. But if I'm obedient, I'll say, yes, Baba, I did it according to your instructions to the best of my ability. And the second, the results are good. The results are actually more than one would have expected. And then thirdly, everybody around them, working with them, because nothing happens in isolation. It's always in relationship with others. And so everyone around them also feels content. And this is because the soul who's obedient is receiving special blessings from the Father and is receiving the blessings from the heart. I'm using the word blessings because I know that sometimes the word boon is used, but one is Ashrivad. And the word Ashrivad usually is something in which it's the mother, the father, or the guru who gives their blessings from their heart. And then Duai. And that also, again, is, I'm sure there are experts here who can differentiate and tell me the difference between exactly those 2 words. But generally, I also feel that when it's good wishes from the heart, when there's that love from the heart and that support from the heart, that describes this word duai. And so because the obedient one is receiving both these blessings that come from the Father, the Satguru, but also from the heart, those good wishes and that love and support, every action is filled with that very special power, and the soul is given a lift through all of this. And of course, for the one who's sometimes obedient and sometimes maybe not, then there isn't that special help being experienced. And of course, then in that case where there is obedience, then you feel everything is natural, everything is easy, no burden, no weight. And in the other case, yes, there is a feeling of effort being put in, a feeling of labor sometimes. And because there isn't that contentment being experienced, then that discomfort also. And so very, very clear markers. And so I don't need to spend a long time investigating what's going on. I should be able to see from the things that Baba said, where there's natural and easy and constant obedience, what are the results of that? And if I'm not experiencing those, then I also know what is the cause of that. And then where the soul is discontent, maybe with the self, maybe with the results of that action. I put in a lot of work, but I'm not seeing an equivalent return, or even as Baba says, more return than the effort I put in. Or maybe the team around me is not very happy. They think I've pushed them too hard, or I wasn't showing them how to do things in the right way. All sorts of reasons why there's discontent. And then Baba took up this whole very interesting phase of describing why discontent comes. And Baba said, well, some people think that how is it possible to satisfy everyone? And of course, when I'm reading these Murlis, the images of the Dadis come to mind. Dadi Prakashmani, Didi Manmoini, Dadi Janki, Mama I knew, but not intimately. But these other Dadis I've known very intimately. And Dadiji, in her role as leader, was a leader for decades. And so that's quite a track record. And in terms of Dadiji, we saw her become lighter and lighter as her responsibilities continued to increase. And her face was sparkling constantly with that love, that joy she was experiencing on the inner level all the time. And I remember Dadi Prakashmani once asking Baba, there was a lot of chit chat in the days of Om Shanti Bhavan. And she said, Baba, I'm trying so hard that everybody should be content. And yet there are some people who are always discontent. And so Baba at that time said to her, Baba understands. And yes, if 95% are content and it's only 5% discontent, Baba is pleased with the result. So Baba made her very light. But it's in this Murli, 14th January 88, very, very important Murli, describing the reasons of discontent. And in that, Baba is saying that sometimes when souls are discontent, there's three different factors that are connected with all of this. One factor is that they haven't understood their own role within what the results are happening. And so there's a misunderstanding there. And Baba didn't elaborate on it, but just explaining it further. When the results aren't as we would like them to be, the tendency for everyone is to point the blame outwards. And Baba's saying, hold on, look at yourself. And to see what are the causes that led to this particular result. One. Secondly, Baba also said, sometimes, or very often, there's very high expectations of the seniors, and they're actually not realistic at all. And so when their unrealistic expectations are not matched up, then of course, again, there's a feeling of discontent. But it was their wrong expectations. And the third, Baba said, their own sanskars and nature from the past have got into the way, or there's some previous karmic account that has got into the way. And so that's another reason why the results aren't as they should be. But of course, instead of looking at the self and understanding all of these different things, there's the tendency to blame. And the blame, of course, will be probably thrown at the seniors. And so Baba's saying that, well, these seniors, these very obedient, elevated souls who are constantly following Baba with their thoughts and words and actions, it's not their fault. They're not to be blamed. I know so often Dadi Janki had to carry the can for things that we were not doing correctly. And we'd say, well, study this. But no, not true. It's something that we have to look at. And so Baba said, well, if it's 95% of souls who are content and only 5% souls who are discontent, well, that's a good result. And it's probably one of the other factors that is creating their discontent, but they're not aware of it. And another very, very interesting thing that Baba was saying, if after I've done something, that scene keeps repeating in my mind, and I keep asking myself the question, was it right that I said this, or was it not right? Was I right in my thinking, or maybe not right? was the action really okay or it wasn't? And Baba says, in your language, you would say that this is your conscience biting you. And so if that's coming up again and again for me, it's creating this unrest, this disturbance, which it would, then again, it's an indication that thinking, speaking, doing weren't according to the line of obedience and Srimad. And so in that case, again, time to explore and understand and sort things out. And for a soul who is steady and consistent and obedient, the action is done, it's finished, and silence. The soul is able to go into a state of silence, of love and joy, not a silence which is empty and bereft of happiness, but a silence which is filled with a great deal of love and joy. And so, again, very, very clear idea of how to be able to see for myself which category do I fall into, jumping from one to the other sometimes, or really steady in my commitment to obedience and Srimad. And then Baba describing that the stage of the soul who is obedient, light and happy and cheerful and radiating joy continually. And so, and that's where Baba also said that whatever it is they've done, they feel their own willpower growing within, their spiritual capacity increasing all the time. And then another description that Baba gave, that sometimes souls feel a little sad, a little unhappy. They're not content with their state of remembrance. They're not very happy with their relationships with others. They're not content with the service that they're doing. And so again, what's going on there? Because Sangam Yuga is the opportunity, the time to create abundance and fortune and to constantly accumulate. And these souls are saying, well, sometimes we feel empty, sometimes we don't feel so full, sometimes we feel that there's something missing. The song is a familiar one, isn't it? We hear these words from different souls at different times. And Baba explained, okay, maybe at this moment of time, everything is fine, everything is okay. But what about past times? Look back on past times and see where it is that things haven't been so accurate. Because on the one hand, you came to Baba to settle karmic accounts, but on the other side, sometimes there's been accumulation of karma, and the soul, instead of being able to settle karma and then be engaged with karma in a way that is of a karma yogi and karam sambandh, an engagement with karma, a relationship with karma, but no bondage of karma. And where it's been my old sanskars and nature, that's led to karma, which has increased my karmic account, my karmic bondage. So today, I think everything is fine. But yet on the other side, in the past, there's an accumulation of little mistakes that I've ignored or I've been careless. And today I was asked, which comes first, carelessness or laziness? Is it that I'm lazy and so I become careless, or is it carelessness that comes first and then laziness? And my own thinking is that I think we become a little bit careless. It's okay if there's a little bit of a delay. It's okay if I procrastinate. So we excuse ourselves in all our little careless things. And then, of course, it becomes inherent within the soul in which I'm lazy. And then I say, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. And of course, by then it's become a sanskar. And in this case, Baba's saying, all of that has been accumulated. And so one is the accumulation of past karmic accounts, and the other is the accumulation of all the little mistakes I've made since I've come to Baba, now in this particular spiritual life of mine. And so the sum total of those I haven't dealt with. And so the burden of the past is pulling. And that's when I say, I feel empty, I don't feel full, I don't feel content. And so when I recognize this, what I need to do is to remember that the only way to settle the karma, both of my spiritual birth, as well as the karma of my past accounts, the only way is powerful, powerful yoga. Yoga, which is really like a lighthouse, a might house. Yoga, which is the fire of yoga. Yoga, which is helping me burn the things of the past so that that is all settled and that is erased. And so when I pay attention to having that quality of yoga, then yes, the things of the past can be settled and the things of this birth can also be settled. Otherwise, the sanskars of the past pull me, and so they disturb my happiness today, but also the accumulation of karma of this spiritual life that also then drags me down, and I don't experience that stage of being double light. So again, very, very clear answers from Baba about what's going on. And then, of course, the sound from the hearts of such children. I want to be alone. I don't want to be involved in service. I don't want to have connection with the family. I want to have that space for myself. All of these things come up. And so Baba then began to outline some of the little mistakes that we think are okay. Never mind, I can just carry on. So one is my lack of attention to powerful Amrit Vela. Amrit Vela, yes, but also Baba was very clear, powerful Amrit Vela, so that it is fulfilling the needs of the soul. And then a few other examples in which Baba's talking about the little mistakes. And of course, Baba's calling them little, but they also can be quite a block. But of course, they're not like the big mistake of impurity or things like this. So compared to that, it's the little things. And in this case, Baba was saying how on the one side, Baba's told you to be a karma yogi. That's an instruction from Baba, a direction. Was I obedient in that? Or did I get engrossed in karma and forget about the yoga? So that was one of the little mistakes. Another one of the little mistakes, Baba said, instead of having the awareness of being nimit, an instrument, what happens is that, again, the I, the ego comes in. So again, a mistake. Or where Baba's spoken about doing things with humility. And instead of being humble, again, I slip off track and I go wandering off with other thoughts or bossiness or control or any of the other things that can come in. And so Baba's saying that, so just look at your track record. To what extent have you followed Baba's directions absolutely in the way that you should? And if you haven't, then of course you're not experiencing the results that you could. You want to have the results of joy and love and happiness in your life, but it's clear that you're not experiencing all of this. But it's the accumulation of all these mistakes that is there coming to take its toll now. And so what do I need to do? I need to keep Baba in front of me And if I keep Baba as my model, as the role model, and then I see the footsteps that Baba has taken to reach that highest destination, then comparing myself not with others, but with Baba, copying Baba, then as I step in those footsteps, then yes, I know that the quality of my thoughts, my words, my actions is really, truly obedient to God. And if I experience that obedience, I'll also feel the lift of the blessings that Baba's giving me. And at that point, then nothing is difficult. Everything becomes very easy. And so all the things that we talk about, but how come Baba's saying it's easy? And it doesn't feel easy for me. Baba's given us a very clear picture of all of that, what it is we need to do, how it is we need to do it. Baba said, I've just given you 4 examples of various things that you haven't been attentive to. But of course, from the early morning through to the night, what should my attitude be? What should my vision be? And of course, that'll then determine my speaking and my doing. And the quality of my thinking creates the pattern of my attitude, of course. And so what's going on? Let me take a very deep look inside. These Muralis are very much the instructions, the tools with which to be able to go inwards and see exactly what's going on and to be able to sort it out and put it right. And then, of course, Baba talking to groups and Baba mentioning how if someone's on a pilgrimage, then they're very aware of the deity they're worshipping and that they're going on pilgrimage to be able to have a vision of that deity. And so they won't remember anything else. They'll just remember that particular deity. And so you're on a pilgrimage. Who are you remembering? And are you still connected with all the ties of the things going on here? Or are you breaking those ties of attachment? And I found it fascinating that Baba especially spoke about grandmothers, because here in London we have quite a lot of sisters who, when they came to Baba, mostly families were coming early on in the 80s and 90s. And those women are now grandmothers. They had children, they raised them, brought them to Baba's home, and then some have stayed and some have gone off to see what the world is like, and I'm sure they'll be back. But those same women, they were quite disciplined with their children. But of course, now that they're grandparents, it's actually fathers too. Grandfathers have the same type of attachment to their grandchildren. But Baba was talking about the grandmothers especially. And in that, Baba was saying that, what is the quality of your love for God? Or is it that the attachment to the grandchildren is so strong that that takes precedence? Because with children, there's a responsibility of putting them on track and doing whatever is needed for their education to support them and help them. But the role of grandparents, to spoil the grandchildren. That's it, nothing else. They don't have any other responsibility as such. And even if the grandmother is cooking, she's cooking out of love, not because of duty. She doesn't have to cook for them, but whatever she'll cook, it'll be just an expression of love. And so that bond, a very, very strong bond. And so Baba was saying, just check yourself and see where you're at, so that you're able to move away from the bondages of attachment that for sure will cause you pain and sorrow. But now just connect with one. And then on the other side, Baba was speaking to the youth, the young people, the young Kumars. And yes, everybody always recognizes that the youth have passion, the youth have inspiration, the youth have energy, the youth have skills, and a lot can be done. But of course, where the energy of young people is being channeled into a negative direction, there's trouble everywhere. And so Baba reminding the Kumars Your energy has to be the energy of non-violence, the energy of peace, so that you're able to carry things in the right way. And that'll be the wonder. People will see your peaceful stance, your responses of peace, and they will come close to Baba through that. The government will be able to recognize who you are and what it is you're doing. So today's Murli, extremely powerful, but also very, very cautionary. What is it that I need to do in this last period of time, in the short time that now remains? So let me see if there are any comments or questions.
That's an understatement, Sister Jenny. There's lots of questions. Well, I've had a few already beforehand. And gentlemen, there's one question, which is that people like Rumi didn't know God, but had so much love for God. So how is it possible that somebody doesn't know God fully, but yet can be so deeply in love with God?
It's something that happens not just in one tradition, but also in many other traditions. The Christian mystics, the Hindu mystics, they've experienced this total commitment, loyalty, and passion for God, but they don't exactly know the form of God or where he is or what he does, but it's really something that's deep within their hearts. They see the state of the world and they see that all these things are really not of the quality that they should be. And so they go on that inner journey. And in that inner journey, they're able to feel God's presence and God's love. But of course, there's no information being shared. If you think about Brahma Baba and the Dadis in the early days, again, there was a great sense of the presence of God, but they actually, the Dadis didn't even know this is Brahma Baba and this is Shiv Baba. And so there was a feeling, there was a beautiful experience they were having. And it's only gradually that then the actual details were being shared and they understood exactly who is God. And so, yes, from the Copper Age onwards, there have been people who have really not been interested in what the world has to offer, but all they want is to be close to God and have that experience of God's love. So these souls have a very special role also, just as the Divine Fathers, the founders of religions, have a special role. And the Sangam Yuga experience, the memory of that, and they carry something within themselves that gives them the power to be able to establish their particular branch. In the same way, these mystics and philosophers who have had deep love for God have been able to inspire many, many generations with that love. So I'm sure that here in the Confluence Age, there are people within their own traditions who have taken some understanding of Baba's knowledge and they accept it to be the truth. But maybe the story of the cycle isn't something they're comfortable with, different aspects, but they've definitely taken some knowledge. And so that sanskar of love is deep within those souls. And so at the right time, at the right period, when they emerge, they express that love and give inspiration to so many others.
So from what you said, Jennifer, then love is not enough. I mean, they have so much love, but then they can't understand or they can't transform.
They weren't in the process of transformation themselves, and also other souls obviously didn't transform. The world kept coming down and down and down to the point where everything became so impure that God actually had to come and intervene directly in human affairs. I know from my own experience, age 8, I'm meeting Brahma Baba and Mama, and at that point, many of the Dadis were there, but I only have a vague memory of the others, but Baba and Mama, I remember Dadi Janki very well because she was the one who was in Pune, which was my hometown. So again, the love that she shared, I remember. But through my teenage years, I'd had that love, and I knew that that love was very special love, but I didn't have any gyan. But neither at that time, between the ages of, say, 10 to 18, I didn't even think I was ready for gyan or needed gyan as such. And it was only then in 1968 that something opened. And I thought, well, let me find out what these BKs are actually saying. And Dadi's words were the magic touch that opened the door. And so, yes, I know when there's only love, it's a lovely feeling, but there isn't any incentive to change. There isn't any understanding of what it is I need to change. And it's only then when I understood Baba's knowledge that, yes, then I understood what it is I needed to do. So my experience tells me that love isn't enough without knowledge. But once you have knowledge, then yes, the power of that love is going to carry you forward. And Baba's spoken about how just being lost in love and none of the obstacles that surely will come to each one, none of those obstacles will stop you, but you'll be able to move forward.
So, gentlemen, there's another question. What is embodiment of the fire of love? So is that the answer, what you've just said, which is love and the knowledge combined?
That's right, yeah. Because love on its own doesn't transform. At least it didn't for me. It didn't make me understand that I had to change my life. I had to connect with God. There was love, but that was okay. It was a part of my life, but it didn't have the power to transform. And then the pure love in which I know who is God, I know I the soul, I'm that deity soul, and I know that it's with God's remembrance that the soul will become Sattva Pradhan and all the alloy will be removed. That fire of love is a very different love to just saying, yes, I love Baba or I love Gyan.
And there's like 3 similar questions, Jayantiben, and they are, could Sister Jayanti talk about her experience of contentment or success and contentment, some real life experience?
When there's a big project, you know that it has to be in cooperation with many others. And you also know that if it's Baba who's guiding things, then you know that there'll always be success through that. And there were 2 huge projects that Aruna, you were part of them also, but one of them was Million Minutes of Peace Appeal. And we all decided that it was the International Year of Peace and we really should do something. And we knew that it really had to be together. And that's the time, 1986, when the RC offices were actually formed because there was a need, because everybody had to learn to work together. And Dadi Janki was sharing her yoga power with the whole story. And the story started in January when we first heard about the International Year. And then the story came to a conclusion, sort of, in October. And it was highly successful because it was Baba's project. It was Baba who had touched it and made it happen. And then I look back and I realized that it was a big challenge. It wasn't so easy for me. And that's because I didn't know myself very well. And it was a big learning curve in which I got to know myself more and more through that whole period. And even through until the last program in which there was this fantastic event, closing event we had at Grace Cathedral in New York, which was fabulous for the public. And of course, Canon Casson came to Baba through that program. So it created a very powerful air quality soul. And of course, it was an amazing event to have participated in and been part of producing, etc. But I know that because I was still understanding my own sanskars, I didn't feel content. The results were amazing, and I don't think we could have achieved more than we did. And that I attribute absolutely to Baba and also the yoga power of the Dadis. Dadi Janki was every day, and she wasn't having yoga for the success of the project, but Baba had said to her, every evening at 4 o'clock, have yoga to support and sustain all of Baba's instruments across the world. And so we'd go to her with a question and she'd say, okay, I'll tell you tomorrow. And the next day she would have an answer of how to deal with things. And so it was quite amazing how amazingly successful it was. It became the largest non-governmental NGO program for the public that was without charging any money for any engagement. And it brought the Brahma Kumaris 7 Peace Messenger Awards. So it was beyond our expectations. So that was Baba, really, 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 truly. And then in terms of contentment with others, it was our first time of working together as a whole, as the combined world, in a sense. London and New York had been collaborating in many different ways right from the very beginning. This was a worldwide effort. And so it was a process of learning. And so it was not such a state of contentment, but it was learning. And I think we all learned a huge amount from all of that. And then 88, we started, and that was again with Baba's very direct input in terms of the title, in terms of the process, and even in making it happen. So again, that was another huge project. And this time I found myself much more stable, much more peaceful, more detached. And again, you could see God at work in amazing different ways in which we didn't expect. Dadiji came to London, but she also went to Spain to meet with the Queen of Spain because the Queen of Spain had heard about the project and contributed. So whether it was leper colonies in the Philippines or whether it was kings and queens across the world, it was fantastic. And I could say that I was more content. The results were, again, absolutely incredible. God in charge. And I would also say that in terms of our relationships, again, we learned a lot. And again, there was more contentment and stability through all of that. So I'm seeing that everything that you do in Brahman life, or probably in Lokik life also, that everything you do in Brahman life is a preparation. You learn and you go further. You learn and you go further. And so I know that with the Dadis, it's been that state where with constant obedience, constant success, and so on. But for me, it hasn't been constant, steady success in terms of my own stage, but learning, learning, learning. And so here I am today. Still alive, still smiling, still going on.
You're doing great, gentlemen. Okay, here's another question. When we follow Srimad, there is the subject of understanding that point within that context. That means that we are all using the dictates of our mind to understand the Murli. Is that true?
Can it be anything else? Because the quality of my understanding is absolutely dependent on my own perspective. And so if my intellect has been a little bit polluted with thoughts about this one, that one, and the other one, and a little bit of critical nature, then I'm going to understand the Murli accordingly, number wise. So yes, definitely. The
So
whole story of number wise.
So how to deal with that?
To keep my intellect free from my own dictates and the influences of others, manmat parmat. And the way to do it is to really understand what is Baba saying to me, first and foremost. And secondly, what is it that Baba's explaining in terms of the whole cycle? Here I am in Sangam Yug, and Baba's talking a lot about bhakti, Baba's talking about a lot about purity, impurity. Now, first was, what was Baba's message to me today? And the second is, how does all this fit in within the bigger picture, the cosmic picture? And definitely never to have the thought that so-and-so should have heard this point. Do they hear this point? Let me check. Do they understand this point? That's not for me to say or to judge. Baba's working with them. They're working with Baba in their own capacity on whatever level it is. And so my responsibility is to see what Baba wants to tell me and to understand that, but also to put it into the bigger picture.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question here about the conscience biting. And so what they're saying is the conscience bites and we don't quite know where the error was. So what to do in that moment? You want to check and change, but you don't quite know where the error was and the conscience is biting. How to minimize the damage?
Okay. Baba was explaining very clearly that it might not be something of the immediate present, that the immediate present is okay, but there is something from the past that wasn't accurate. And if I'm being honest with myself, then I'll go back into the past and I'll be able to track what it was. And maybe it's not just a question of one incident. It's a question of my sanskar and my nature. And probably that persists to a certain extent even today. And if I can identify that, that's the checking. And then with that honesty, Baba will give me the power to be able to change it. But if I'm just, my conscience is troubling me, but I'm not clear enough to understand what aspect of my sanskar needs to be adjusted, I'm not going to be able to change it. So I really have to look at myself with honesty very deeply.
And Baba said that this is not from this Murli, but I feel these questions came, and as Dadi has taught us, everybody's question is important. But they're saying that Baba said there would be queues from Bombay to Abu, and obviously we have social distancing, and he doesn't see that happening. So, when will it happen? That's the question.
I've heard Baba talk about queues from Abu Road to Mount Abu, and we've seen that happen every time Avyak Baba would come. Coming down the mountain, going back up the mountain, the queues would begin at 11 o'clock at night and would continue till 1:30 sometimes, people still waiting for their buses and their rides. I've not heard from Bombay to Abu, but but also you can see how at this moment, the message that's reaching out is in terms of multi-thousands. We can't actually calculate how many thousands watch. There was an Indian channel that's opened recently, and I had an interview on that, and I've forgotten the figures, but it was multi-thousands that had watched it. And I don't know in recent times, but within a week, not just at that time of watching, but later, they told us it was multi-thousands. So Baba's message reaching out, it's impossible to calculate how many people are getting Baba's message at this point of time. We were trying to do a report of service just in the UK, never mind the world, just in the UK. And it's impossible to calculate figures. It really is. You know, you could calculate there was 100 people at this program. We gave out 100 pieces of Toli or 500 pieces of Toli. Now we're not even having to make the Toli and give it out, but it's multi-thousands who are benefiting. So I think that that time when Baba's message is reaching out to many, many, many in different ways that we're not even aware of is happening.
Yeah, that was, I've just checked, it's so far 200,000, but I think more than that, 200,000 have seen that interview just a few months ago. Yeah.
Okay, the January interview.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a particularly famous channel anyway. And
I think it's more than that, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Maybe on a couple of other YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's, as you say, difficult to calculate exactly, but we know that a huge amount is happening in terms of all of these things that are going on. And not just by the Brahmin family. I think it was last week I mentioned this program, a conference that I participated in. Well, I was watching Mind Shift, and the ideas that were being shared, especially by 4 people who were very connected with Brahma Kumaris, they were talking about the things that we would talk about. So when Baba talks about mic souls, I was actually seeing in front of myself these mic souls sharing message from Baba in a way that they have now interpreted and understood and putting it across to people in the language that people are used to. And it was making sense to people. And essentially the message was, you have to change your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs, your understanding, and then you'll be able to change the world outside. And even the title of a particular session was the most systemic changes happen through the most personal changes. And so we've always talked about, and people always ask us this question, how can you change the system? But now it's mics like these souls who are telling people, yes, the system can only change when you change. And so the message is getting out there. It really is, whether through white saris or non-white saris, but also especially through mic souls.
Yeah, so actually there's lots of questions and they're very good questions, and I'm so sorry that we cannot take them up. And I'm really trying to be fair and ask them as they're coming in. So, Sister Jayanti, I think we need to stop here. I don't know what else to do, but I mean, of course, I know there's a need in the Brahmin family to ask the questions. But yeah, I think, anyway, do you want to respond to that?
Well, what I suggest is that maybe next time, next Monday, we keep half an hour for questions. Today, I tried to keep 20 minutes for questions, but maybe next time we keep 30 minutes for questions and see how we get on.
Okay.
But also, I know that when you talk to Baba about your question, Baba will give you the answer. I'm not saying this to fob off anyone, but that is the reality. Sit with Baba and reflect, and the answer will surely come.
Yeah, and also, Sister Jayanti, we're planning, since Sudesh Didi is sitting in quarantine, so we planned her meeting with her on Saturday, 12th of June, and we're just going to share the screen and show you that. You can just take a screenshot or something. And same time, 6 o'clock, 12th of June. And this is the topic Didi gave. She liked this topic. And she's actually going to talk a lot about inner stability as well for current times. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And we'll have meditation now. And then our usual wave to Sister Jayanti.
नींद से अब जागो रे मानव पिता धरा पर वो जगत परमात्मा, नींद से अब जागो रे मानव, प्रभु में मन को रमा। हो गई है भोर कब की, हो गई है भोर कब की, ज्ञान का सूरज उगा,
ज्ञान का सूरज उगा,
जा रही हर श्वास बेरका, जा रही हर श्वास बेरका, योग प्रभु से तू लगा।
नींद से अब जागो रे मानव, प्रभु में मन को रमाओ।
नींद से अब जागो रे मानव, प्रभु में मन को रमा।
Thank you, Jendivan. Again, lots of love and appreciation from everyone in the
Thank
chat
you.